Namaste. Welcome to our Swayam Prabha channel course on Management and Library and Information Center. I am the course coordinator, Professor Arun Kumar Chakraborty. I am also the head of the Department of Library and Information Science, Netaji Subhash Open University. I will be guiding you through the exciting journey and my experience and attentions of will forget different aspects of the course. So the learning outcomes of this course will be actually the management of information centers module 1. Module 1 is a management perspectives, and the unit 6 it will cover the management functions, which is planning portion, because the planning, there is planning, organizing, budgeting, etc. So I'll be talking in this schedule of unit 6 only the function of planning under the management aspects. So in these aspects, what we'll do, the learners, your outcome will be by the end of this unit 6, you will be able to understand the role and functions of libraries and information center. You are also able to apply the management principles to the library operations. We'll also develop skills in collection development, cataloging, and classification. So the learners, after the reading unit 6, understand there are different functions of the planning and library sections: planning, organizing, staffing, learning, and controlling. So we say the post-policy. So apply the relevant measures and principles behind these functions and day to day. How this is explained, I'll go by this. So this unit will be acquire knowledge about the management functions in brief, get insights of the meaning, nature, and importance of the management functions of planning, be familiar with the different steps of the planning, gain knowledge of the major types of planning, ensure and explain the principles of which the plannings behind is based on. You have to understand that. And then the learners will be able to apply concept of planning in library and information centers. Learners will be able to analyze the situation and provide proper planning based on the situation. So the table of contents, this one will cover introductions, management functions, planning characteristics, planning steps, planning types. And so the importance of the planning, principles of planning, factors to consider of strategic planning in the library and information center, management by objectives. So in the earlier unit, the concept of management and various schools of thoughts emerge from the years here discussed. The unit will throw light on the different functions of the management, particularly emphasizing the planning function. So management is a social process involving responsibilities for economical, effective planning and regular of operation on an enterprise in the fulfillment of the given purposes. Planning, it is a dynamic process consisting of various elements and activities. These activities are different from operative functions like marketing, finance, and purchase, etc. So management functions, if we think about the management functions, different experts have classified the functions of management differently. George and Jerry, planning, organizing, curating, and controlling. Then Henry Foyle, that's forecast and plan, organize, comment, and control. The postcard, where the P stands for planning, O for, this is a Luther, Garlic, they have organized this one, postdoc curve, where the P stands for planning or organizing and staffing, and D stands for directing, and C for coordination and reporting and budgeting for B. So we have to think about that YP stands for planning, organizing, S stands for staffing, D for directing, C for coordinating, and R for reporting, and B for budgeting. So these are the elements we need for any of the planning of the cases. So all these components are consist of the planning of these management functions. The Kunj and Daniel, they are also the West. These are planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So the different concepts, different people are defining it different ways. So we have to know that how this planning is. Almost things are same, but the aspects of the things it's completely different. So planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. Particularly, these functions are overlapping in nature, and each function blends into other, and each affect the performance of others. So this I have given already from the where this source. So controlling, planning, operations, how these are interrelated. We have shown this in the slides. So these are the things we need to consider of this. Then management functions planning. It deals with the chalking out of a future course of actions and deciding advancement of the most appropriate course of actions for achievement of the predetermined goals. When we plan for anything, we have to find out that what is the determination goal. If we do not have a goals, that means input, output. So the planning is there. We have to know the from the input and to output, and then that is way throughput. How this from input to output it will go, that is the call planning. And then organizing. According to Henry Fowell, organize a business or in the prerequisite in which everything useful of its functions, that is raw material, tools, capital, and personnel. Because for anything, if you want to organize, we have to know that what are the raw materials are there, what are the functions are there, what are kind of tools of capital, and then first is finance capital. Because if the tools are there, techniques are there, it is not kind of because capital and personal, these are the very, very important aspects of organizing any kind of things that we have to know very well. Then management functions staffing, functions of manning, organizational structure, keeping in band. Then directing, it is the part of the management functions which accommodates the organizational methods to work efficiently for achievement of the organizational purposes. So directing means it is part of management functions and which accommodates the directing. And then controlling. Controlling means it implies the measurement of the accomplishment against the standards, corrections, and deviations. If any of the ensures of the deficient achievement of this organization goals. So these are the very, very important part we have to think of the planning. According to Kunj, that planning is deciding in advance what to do, when to do, how to do. So we should know that what, why, how, when, where. These are the 5 points. If we do not know, we will not be able to do any kind of planning. So planning is very, very important because we have to know that what is to be done, why it is to be done, when it's to be done. These are the bridges from the where we can. A plan is a future of actions, and it is an experience of the problem solving, decision making. So it's a future because once we plan, this cannot be, there is a plan which is contingency plan because immediately some action has to be taken. That plan is different, but that is also disaster planning. It has to be think of the beforehand itself. So the any organization, anything we have to do, any occasions, whatever the occasions is very small or height, because we have to know that we have to do a strong planning. Until unless if it's a reversed planning we are made, we will be not be able to deliver the rest of things. So according to course, planning is determination of the course of actions to achieve the desired goals, and thus planning is on systematic thinking and about the ways and means for the accomplishments of the predetermined goals. Planning is necessary to ensure proper and the preservation of intellectual activity. And because you have to understand, we have to when we are doing the planning for the academic purpose, when you're doing planning for the organizations, when we're planning for the entire things. So ensure proper utilization of the human and non-human resources. Because if we waste the human resources, if we use the non-human resources, then it's not a proper planning, because that utilization is the most important, and it is all the pervasive. It is an intellectual activity, and it also helps to avoid confusion, uncertainties, risk, and wastage, etc. So we have to think of that how we should avoid the confusion, uncertainties, risk, and wastage. These are the things, important aspect we have to know. A plan is a well organized thought, scheme of the program made in advance and complete in all aspects, that sets the objective of the group and the way it is to be achieved by marshalling the financial, material, and manpower resources. So, finance, material, and manpower. These are the things as the most important part when we do the planning, because it otherwise is a wastage. So, planning is a process that involves, we have to set a goal. Setting goal is most important part of the planning, because until and unless we set a goal, we do not know what is to be done, because that means we have to think about what should be the output, what is my requirement, why I should do this planning, and to achieve that goals we have to the plan. So that is the determining how to achieve them. Then organize the resources, efforts needed to do so. Then we have to, once that we know that we have to achieve the same this kind of things, so we have to organize the resources. Whatever the resources, it can be manpower, it can be human resources, it can be ultimately other resources. What kind of efforts is, if it can be LIS or others, in everywhere we not only this planning or things are required for only LIS. All plannings are for the entire every sector, for any business purpose. So preparing for potential challenges and for opportunities. So this kind of planning, we have to go for that. Again, the planning characterizations. The planning goal orientation. Planning is looking ahead of the planning is distinguished, restricted for the affectionist. Efficiency. Planning is an intellectual process. Planning involves choice and decision making. Planning is all pervasive. Then planning is the primary functions of a management. What are the primary functions? Planning is a continuous process, and planning has to be flexible. A plan cannot be a rigid, because if we have a rigid plan, if something does not happen, sometimes the machine does not work, or some unfortunate scene has come. So if we are not able to flexibility and accommodative, we will not be able to look at the growth, because the process. Why is the flexibility is required? Because planning is the main process, input and output, throughput, how we'll plan, how we'll do, and this how process, if it is not a flexible is there, then we'll be not be able to receive the goals. So that's the most important part we have to think. Then what are the steps of planning? Defining the problems. So first of all, when we want to go to for any kind of planning, we have to find out what is the problem, why we should do problem. It may not be always a problem, but we think about this. A problem means that if we want to develop a library or new library, so then the library systems going to be defined. So what kind of library should be there? So what kind of problems will come? That's problem. If we do not know the problems, how we'll analyze the collection of data? So once we know the problem, then collect and analyze the data. We have to collect the data. What are the problems are there? What could be the things? Until we have a good information collection of the data and analysis of the data, will the problem, not no problem, no planning or things can be worked out very well. So that we have to understand the collect and analysis data. Then clarify and prioritize the problems. So we have to find out the what are the clarification, the clarity, clarify. We have to, these are the problems we have to clarify, and then prioritize the problems, because if we want to solve the problems in all at a time, problems cannot be solved. So we have to see that step by step approach should be there for the problem solving. Then so write a goal statement for each solution. So important, implement the solution. Once we know that what is the goal, and then only the implement the solution. We can do that. Then monitor and evaluate. We have to know that we have always, that anything we do, we have to always monitor and evaluate. This is the most important part of it. Then restart with a new problem or refine the old problems. If we see that with a new problem, if that is problem is different, so restart with a new problem or refine the old problems. That is the most important part of the planning. Then planning types. What are the different types of the planning? Planning may be divided into certain levels on the basis of scope, significance, and time span. So the basis of the scope, significance, and time span. So corporate planning and functional planning. Then strategic planning and practical planning. Strategic planning means, because what we have to do, that any what are the strategies to be taken during the planning process, then the important part is, so until unless we do not strategize the resources, how the plan is, strategic is very very important. Until unless you do this, and then the tactical planning. Then tactical planning means, if there is a problem comes, how we'll resolve that issues. Then long range planning and short range planning. Long range planning means that if we want to implement, what could be the disaster management, what could be the after effects, what can be other effects. So this kind of long term planning we have to be there. Then short range of planning, because during implementation we have to do sometimes of short range of planning, or suddenly something has come, I mean disaster has come, so we have to do the short term planning. So all the types of plans may be broadly categorized into the two groups: single use plans and standing plans. So the two groups, one is a single use plans and one is a standing plan. Single use plans means that's what kind of single we can use, and then the standing plan. So other types of planning is a operational planning, contingency planning, which is an alternative course of actions if the original plan fails. Because contingency planning are two types. One is that when is a alternative course of action, because if we have made a plan but suddenly the machine does not work, or suddenly the person has not come, so what is to be done? So there should be a contingency plan. So immediately management should be there, should not fail. So if the original plan fails, we have to be very very so it will be what should be done. We have to should be able to reach our goal within any difficulties. So contingency planning is very very important. We have to know that any disaster comes, any point of time, any difficulties comes, we should be able to overcome. That is called the contingency planning. And then improve potential of the planning. Why? Provides the direction, because until unless if we made a plan, we cannot know that what directions we are going, because it will give us in what direction we have to go. Then decrease the chances of risk, because once we plan, we have to see that how we should decrease the chances of risk. Then decrease overlapping wasteful activities. This is the most important, because if we do not plan, same resources, same manpower is wastage, and same things, same activity is done by the same people. So that means we're reaching goal becomes difficult. Not only the developing and wasteful activities, because that also may chaos the systems. So that has to be taken care of. Then assist in avoiding chaos and confusion. So we have to do that. Any chaos and confusion should not be there in the planning process, because once we want to get things done, it is used by the manpower and resources. So if there is a confusion, then the man and power and resources cannot be utilized properly, because if you do not know which machine is to be worked for what purposes, or what materials to be used for what purposes, if we do not give the correct information, if we do not have a correct plan, then it will be making a chaos. So assist in avoiding chaos and confusions. So encourages innovative ideas, because planning is most important on the encouraging innovative ideas. We have to know what are the innovative ideas are there, because how we will get the innovative ideas, because if we make the contingency plans, we find this a difficult situation. Until more and more difficult situation we arise, we are becoming more knowledgeable. So we have it becomes more innovative and that kind of things. So we should not be break down. If the one plan fails, we should not feel that this is gone. That has to be contingency planning. That's called the innovations we should do. So importance of planning is that aids in decision making, provides opportunity to analyze alternative course of actions. So we have to this opportunity, we have to find out that if this plan fails, what should be the alternative course of actions. Then reduces uncertainties. We know that we should go by any uncertainty should go on. Then minimizes the impulsive arbitrary decisions, contributes towards more efficient functioning of the various working units. So importance of planning. A plan is a well thought out scheme for program made in the advance and complete in all aspects that sets the objectives of the group and way it is to be achieved and by marshalling. Financial, marketing, and manpower resources. These are the principles of planning. Principle of planning is that principle of commitment. Then principles of flexibility, principles of efficiency, principles of objective. So these are the principles of planning. What are the principles? Because you should know these principles helps in the principles of commitment means we should know what we are committing. Principles helps in the determination of the planning period. Then principles of the flexibility. A plan can be adjusted during its operation. That's our principle of flexibility. Then principle of efficiency. A plan should be made to objectives to achieve the objectives with a minimal cost and maximum efforts. The minimum cost and minimum efforts should be there for the planning purposes. And then principles of objective is clear and specific goals are set that align which with the overall visions. That is the objective. We have to have a clear objectives of the or clear goals for the planning purposes. So these are the principles we have talking about. The principles of planning is principles of timing. Planning is implemented according to the given terminology. Then principles of developing premises. Conceptions made about the environment in which plans are made and implemented. So you have to know that under the worst circumstances, what is the environment condition for the planning? Then principles of primacy of the planning. Planning is the first for primacy, primary functions of every manager. Because any manager, whatever joins, whoever in what level the manager is there, he has to plan for execution. Why even the executive level, who is doing this job, he has to, if he does not do his work, his plan, he cannot deliver the job. So principles of reflective thinking. Planning is a based on rational consideration. We have to know that what kind of the rational considerations are there. Then principles of planning, principles of contribution to enterprise objections tips, principles of securing participation, principles of selection of alternatives. We have to know that how we should think of the alternatives. That principle has to be taken care that in that principles how we have it taken and the alternatives can be done. Then principles of planning processes. These are the planning processes we have shown. Then principles of the pervasiveness. Then principles of the follow-up. We should know that which follow principles we should follow the follow-up actions. Then principles of the strategic planning. We should know that what are the strategic planning should be there. Then principles of innovations. And then factors of considerations. So principles of innovations is a very important means that we have to know that we should how we should do that so on so on. Then factors of to consider the planning, strategic planning in library and information center, because planning can be for the any sectors for any work. I told you that we should be doing any work. So the changes in the library outlook, how we should do the changes in the library strategic planning. Strategic planning in library information center, it should be a changes in the library outlook, changes in the information communication technology, what communication technology we are using, then changes the electronic publishing. We know that the publishing industry has changed of this, changes in higher education, we know that, changes in the research environment has been changed. So that's why we have to plan. The library and information center has a huge task how to do the planning of this. Then strategic planning in library and information centers, formulations of libraries on future missions in the light in the changes environment and the factors such as the regulation, competition, technology of the user. Then creation of the library structure with the library repository and sources to successfully carry out its competitive strategy. Then development of a competitive strategy to achieve and vision and goals. That is the most important part of the planning process. So now we should know that how this management by objectives. Management by objective was first popularized by Peter F. Drucker. We know that the management guru. We know that practice of management. So MBO was the first popularized by Peter Drucker in 1954 in his book The Practice of Management. The surplus as a goal. Profit is the surplus. So we have to think that we have to make how surplus we can make it. Then profit is a surplus. Any surplus is that is a profit. The desired surplus set in quantitative terms and will be the overall objectives. And the objectives of the non-profit enterprises, including libraries, will have to be value of the usefulness, because you have to know that any non-profit enterprise, including whoever there, so that's right, you have to value by the usefulness. If the usefulness, then because here is not, we are not earning, but earning is that the user behavior, user happiness is our earning. Verifiable or measurable objectives. So the purposeful management aims at making the objectives verifiable. For importance, public library may state the objectives in physical terms of the population to be covered. With varieties of objectives is that an enterprise being a system is made up of a systems, parts, and components such as divisions, department, sections, services, products, and programs. So different activities with an area give rise to a number of objectives of multiple objectives. Essence of purposeful and efficient management lies demarcations of timely coordination of the various objectives. So planning proceeds on the basis of the facts, assumptions, backgrounds, and objectives. Assessment of the factors that go to the making a plan and anticipating the type of environment in which the plan is operate is premising. So premising has a to deal with the controllable elements which are the political, social, and governmental origin, partially the controllable elements. Example, market share of a company's products and the management controls of elements and access time. Maybe example in the access time in the libraries. So different management concept is there also same and with forecasting. Forecasting is a central feature of premising. So it is the two types of exploratory or normative. While exploratory forecasting is based on an intelligent interpretation of a past and present trends, facts of the events to obtain a possible outline of the future. And normative forecasting, it designs with the specification of a goal or end states, the proceeds, and to identify the stages to be gone through the to attain that goals. So forecasting rely on the data. Community analysis is a useful technique for identifying the library's market. Forecasting of a social and political factors, the Delphi techniques and goal-oriented forecast have been focused useful for forecasting technologies and trends. So the decision making, that's most important for any planning of this one. The essence of the decision making is choosing from among the options. The process of decision making involves premising, identifying, evaluating alternative course and selecting. So sound decision making management decisions are those that result in the attainment to the objectives at a minimum cost or the shortest possible time and in the stipulated of the environment. Library management, being a people and mind oriented activity, involves more managerial plan and scientific decision making. So sound decision making entails thinking about the developing alternatives. So limiting factors, we have to know that what are the limiting factors for the planning. They act as a constraints in the attainment of the objectives. An alternative course to be considered must be the one that overcomes the limitation factor. For many libraries, development plan space is found to be a limiting factor, and the evaluation of alternatives. So how we do the alternatives, you have to think of. That's most important. Comparison of alternatives. It is easier when results are stated in concerned concrete term, because alternative we can feel that if the results are stated, you know that there is a concrete term or examination of a critical components alternatives and their likely behavior in the face of changes in the external environment forces are important factors in evaluation. As many libraries functions in a potential environment, library decision makers need to address themselves to the issues arising from the political analysis. So, policies, strategies, and tactics. The policies are guidelines to decision making and stipulate the boundary within which the plan operates. And then the types of strategies. The major strategies deal with the broad areas and key policies and provide a unified decision, direction, and shape for the success of a plan. Areas in a library amenable to major strategies include collection building, resource sharing, information product, departmentalization, and staffing. So, developing the strategies. Major strategies are developed in all key factors in area of products, and questions to be asked are what is the our business? Who are our customers or who are our users? What do our customer want? What is our user demand? How much will our customer users buy and what is the price? When if the business what price and he is also if he user for the library, they will see that on what cost I am getting it. Do we wish to be a product leader? How we should give, because information products and services that are cost, so that how we are the leader in that area products of the questions to be asked. Do we develop our own new products? What advantages do we have serving customer needs? And what about existing and potential competition? That has to be done very well. And we have to know that. Then, developing strategies. In the area of products, the questions to be asked: how far can we go in serving customer needs? What profit margins can we expect? What basic form should be our strategy stacks? Summary. I would summarize the following things: that with the changing environment, library and information center needs proper planning and maybe integrated library planning with the both strategic and dynamic planning features. Jones said in 2024 that standard library strategic plans sometimes may remain inflexible and unable to adapt quickly to helpful strategies, shifting proper priorities, and unexpected challenges. So, the new integrated planning should be built around flexibility and collective sharing of knowledge in our order to quickly react and formulate motion more efficient and timely responses to the changing demands. Monthly assessment, constant communication, and planning based review cycles should be given importance while planning strategies to remain relevant and current. So, then this unit enlightened about management functions, especially planning. So, we came to know about our different types of planning along with the different principles, features, importance, and limitation of the planning. It is evident that library and information centers need proper planning to provide the need-based effective user practices with optimum use of manpower and other resources. So I have given the review of this lectures. So now I shall give you some of the exercise of the short questions. You can do that. Define the planning, state any four importance of the planning, then discuss any three important principles of planning. What is meant by directing? What is a strategic planning? Why planning is important for library and information center? This kind of I just giving a short questions, so the 5 or 6 marks that people can ask from this kind. If you read of this one, then I have also given some of the MCQ as the Luther Relic and management function says that in the postcard stands that communication, calling, cooperation, and coordination. Which one be? So it is a coordination. Then MCQ 2, the principles helps in the determination of the planning period. One is principle of component. That means this principles helps in the determination of the planning period. Which principles? Principles of the commitment, principles of flexibility, principles of the efficiency, principles of the objective. So principles of the commitment. And then MCQ third questions, management by objectives. So it is by Henry, which is given Henry Fayol, Peter Drucker, Patrick Drucker, Taylor. So it is a Peter Drucker. And then MCQ 4, without gap, actual performance of each individual department and division cannot be measured, but should be planning, directing, coordinating, and standardization. So it should be planning. That means without planning, actual performance of each individual department and division cannot be measured. These are the reading list. I have given different reading list of this one. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thanks a lot. Thanks.